Have you ever found yourself sitting at your desk, completely determined to focus on a high-priority career goal or a meaningful creative project, only to find your hand instinctively reaching for your phone just 5 minutes later? You open an app, swipe through a few short videos, check a couple of empty notifications, and before you even realize what has happened, an hour of your life has completely vanished into the digital void. This repetitive, exhausting loop is not a reflection of a flawed character, nor is it a simple lack of logical willpower. It is the direct biological consequence of living in a hyperstimulated modern society that has successfully turned your brain's primitive survival mechanisms into a highly profitable commercial playground. We enter our daily routines completely surrounded by an artificial menu of instant, effortless gratification, slowly frying our neural pathways and leaving us chronically restless, easily bored, and profoundly disconnected from our true human potential. Welcome back to Everyday Better You, a dedicated sanctuary where we look past the superficial trends of personal growth and commit to becoming 1% better every single day. We exist in a digital matrix specifically engineered to exploit your internal reward pathways, flooding your system with non-stop hits of cheap chemical satisfaction. This constant saturation acts as an invisible psychological anchor, permanently crushing your baseline motivation and making the difficult, necessary work of building a magnificent life feel entirely unappealing. But real self-sovereignty demands that you gather the brave conviction to actively starve these algorithms, reclaim your attention currency, and permanently rewrite your biochemical menu. Lean back, breathe deeply, and allow yourself to listen with your full presence. Right now, we are going to break free from the instant gratification matrix, execute a strategic neurobiological reset, and retrieve the ultimate keys to owning a brilliant, deeply focused, and highly sovereign life on your own terms. Part 1. The artificial menu, how modern society captures our primitive drives. In our ordinary daily routines, we inadvertently operate within a highly sophisticated, invisible trap that silently drains our vital internal energy and completely fractures our long-term capacity for deep focus. To truly understand why it feels so intensely difficult to maintain consistency with our career goals, our health routines, and our personal growth habits, we must look past superficial motivational slogans and examine the mechanical structure of the modern environment. We live in an unprecedented era of human history where the primitive biological machinery of the human brain is being actively exploited by world-class behavioral engineers, software architects, and corporate algorithms. Every single detail of our contemporary visual world, from the variable scrolling feeds on our smartphones to the instant delivery of hyper-palatable foods, is explicitly designed to capture our attention by offering a non-stop artificial menu of effortless rewards. This continuous exposure creates a profound neurobiological imbalance within our consciousness. You slowly build an insatiable, unconscious dependency on short-term external stimulation, completely unaware that the more you choose to feed your mind from this cheap commercial menu, the more fragile, unmotivated, and profoundly dissatisfied your ordinary daily reality becomes. The brilliant French philosopher, author, and depth thinker Albert Camus shed a piercing, timeless light on this exact human vulnerability when he observed in his classic writings that some people talk in their sleep. Lecture appearances are a version of it. This profound observation forces us to confront the absolute emptiness of living our lives on autopilot, sleepwalking through an environment meticulously staged by external corporate actors. Albert Camus makes it deeply clear that when we surrender our conscious choices to the automated habits of a hyperstimulated world, we are not operating from a place of genuine individual sovereignty. We are merely reacting to artificial prompts, filling our awareness with cheap entertainment to avoid the necessary friction of independent thought, and blinding ourselves to our true evolutionary path to improve ourselves day by day. To fully comprehend the depth of this modern trap, we must realize that our brains were evolutionarily designed for an era of extreme physical scarcity. In nature, a chemical known as dopamine was synthesized by our nervous system not to deliver ultimate pleasure, but to generate the necessary motivation, craving, and behavioral drive required to seek out scarce, life-sustaining resources. When an ancient ancestor discovered a bush of sweet berries or successfully identified a water source, their brain baseline experienced a healthy, localized spike of dopamine, reinforcing that specific survival behavior. However, in our fast-paced contemporary matrix, technology has completely detached this reward chemical from the requirement of physical labor or constructive output. Today, you can sit completely motionless on a couch and receive thousands of highly concentrated, simulated survival rewards within a single hour, simply by swiping through short videos, checking likes on a digital profile, or purchasing fast food. The immediate consequence of this artificial abundance is a devastating distortion of our natural motivation systems. Because your primitive subconscious mind cannot distinguish between a real, hard-earned life victory and a simulated digital reward, it automatically chooses the path of least resistance. Why should your brain allocate immense cognitive focus, creative discipline, and emotional grit toward writing a complex business strategy or working out at a gym when it can secure the exact same chemical satisfaction in less than 2 seconds by opening an app on a smartphone? This toxic dynamic slowly turns your mind into a reactive machine, training your system to reject any task that demands patient effort, structural delay, or deep concentration. You find yourself trapped in a state of chronic procrastination, looking at your massive potential fade away while you mindlessly consume the curated lives of total strangers on a glowing glass screen. Breaking free from this hidden prison requires you to step back into the position of the silent observer and view the modern digital world with absolute icy clarity. Recognize that the continuous restlessness you experience during your quiet working hours is not a personal defect or an inherent lack of intelligence. It is the natural psychological consequence of an overstimulated, chemically exhausted nervous system. You cannot fix this internal imbalance by reading more superficial self-help literature or forcing yourself to work through sheer exhaustion-inducing willpower. True, sustainable transformation demands that you take full responsibility for your sensory inputs, actively build a hard boundary around your attention, and systematically starve the modern matrix of your vital human energy. By having the absolute bravery to look at the artificial menu for what it truly is, a system designed to monetize your distraction, you permanently reclaim your internal sovereignty and lay down the foundational bricks for a brilliant life. Part 2, the chronic low, the invisible exhaustion of dopamine baseline crashes. To permanently reclaim your brain from the instant gratification matrix and build an unshakable inner foundation, we must examine the specific neurological laws governing our emotional states. Most people walk through their ordinary daily lives believing that dopamine is a simple chemical reward that is released exclusively at the moment of achieving a goal, receiving a compliment, or consuming a pleasure. They assume that when the pleasurable activity is completed, their internal world simply returns to its original state of neutral comfort. This major misunderstanding causes millions of individuals to continuously indulge in cheap digital stimulation, completely blind to the fact that every single artificial spike they experience inevitably triggers a devastating proportional crash within their underlying chemical baseline. The more you choose to saturate your receptors with nonstop hits of easy gratification, the lower your natural baseline drops, leaving your mind in a state of chronic emptiness, profound lack of motivation, and persistent anxiety during your ordinary hours. The highly respected neuroscientist and deep biological thinker, Dr. Andrew Huberman, provided a piercing light on this exact neurological vulnerability when he observed that dopamine is not about pleasure, it is about motivation, craving, and pursuit. And when you saturate your brain with constant artificial spikes, you inevitably crash your baseline, leaving you feeling empty, unmotivated, and deeply dissatisfied with your ordinary reality. This sobering physiological reality means that your underlying feelings of inadequacy are not necessarily a reflection of a flawed life. Rather, they are the direct chemical consequence of a burnout dopaminergic system. Dr. Huberman emphasizes that dopamine controls the friction of pursuit. By constantly saturating your mind with the peak highlights of thousands of individuals, you artificially manipulate your brain into believing that your entire tribe is vastly outperforming you, which automatically triggers an evolutionary survival panic deep within your subconscious. To fully understand the mechanics of this internal depletion, we must look at how the brain continuously works to maintain a state of perfect biochemical equilibrium, a process known as homeostasis. Imagine your internal reward system operating on a delicate psychological scale. Whenever you experience an artificial dopamine spike, such as scrolling through a hyperstimulating video feed or winning a digital game, the scale tips violently toward the side of sudden gratification. Because your nervous system cannot tolerate this extreme chemical distortion for long, it immediately activates an equal and opposite mechanism to pull the scale back down. This regulatory response is driven by a deep drop in your available dopamine reserves and a temporary desensitization of your neural receptors. The scale does not simply return to zero, it swings deeply into a state of chemical deficit, creating a profound internal valley of restlessness and irritation. This immediate chemical crash is the exact reason why you feel an intense, localized wave of dissatisfaction the very moment you put down your smartphone after an hour of mindless browsing. The ordinary objects in your room look dull, your professional assignments feel completely overwhelming, and your creative hobbies seem entirely devoid of joy. Your brain has entered a temporary state of starvation, and because the conscious ego is completely ignorant of this underlying chemical deficit, it automatically interprets this physiological discomfort as an existential crisis. You tell yourself that your career is inherently boring, that your goals are completely unachievable, or that you lack the natural talent required to build a magnificent reality. In this vulnerable state, you automatically reach for your device once again to escape the very discomfort that the device created, locking your consciousness into a destructive, descending spiral of validation dependency. Breaking free from this toxic biochemical matrix requires you to develop a profound state of emotional discipline and radical trust. You must gather the courage to stop running away from the quiet discomfort of the dopamine crash, allowing your nervous system the necessary time and space to naturally restore its chemical baseline. Reclaiming your personal freedom does not require you to completely isolate yourself from modern technology or live in a state of continuous, bitter self-punishment. Instead, it means treating your brain baseline as your most sacred internal resource, actively protecting your neural receptors from artificial manipulation. By choosing to stay present with the quiet restlessness of your ordinary hours without seeking a quick digital hit, you clear the toxic fog from your mind, restore your natural baseline motivation, and regain the sovereign strength to build a brilliant life on your own unshakable terms. Part 3. Mapping your dopamine leaks, identifying the silent drains of attention. When we begin to understand that our chronic lack of motivation is the direct consequence of an exhausted chemical baseline, we are forced to confront a massive realization: our vital internal energy is not being lost in a single massive failure, but is being continuously siphoned away through 1,000 minor invisible leaks throughout our day. Every single time you allow a random digital notification to interrupt your deep work, every moment you spend mindlessly checking your emails while waiting for a task to compile, and every instance where you open a browser tab to read gossip, you are actively participating in a psychological robbery where your creative focus is violently stolen. We pride ourselves on our long-term goals, our elaborate career plans, and our structured routines on this journey to become 1% better every single day. Yet, we continuously find ourselves completely paralyzed when it comes to taking action, completely blind to the fact that we have already drained our raw enthusiasm through these minor habits of distraction. The magnificent American president and deep biological thinker Theodore Roosevelt provided a piercing light on this exact mental trap when he famously stated that comparison is the thief of joy. While this profound law is traditionally applied to social envy, it reveals the hidden mechanics of attention fragmentation. Every single time you look laterally at a digital screen, checking for a quick reward or comparing your immediate situation with an external source of information, you are actively permitting a silent thief to enter your internal kingdom. Theodore Roosevelt forces us to recognize that mental power operates under a strict law of conservation. You only possess a finite amount of focus each day, and when you choose to scatter that sacred force across 1,000 trivial streams, you leave your own life completely uncultivated. To successfully execute an effective neurobiological reset, you must transition from a state of passive reaction to a state of radical internal auditing, mapping out your daily attention leaks with absolute, uncompromised honesty. Watch your physical behavior throughout a typical afternoon like a detached, highly clinical scientist. Notice the exact environmental cues that trigger your automated habit loops. Is it the sudden ping of a text message that causes you to drop your creative work? Is it a minor wave of professional frustration that drives you to open an entertainment website? By bringing these unconscious patterns into the clear light of conscious awareness, you strip them of their power to manipulate your choices behind closed doors. The absolute mistake of our modern workspace culture is believing that we can maintain high-level cognitive production while keeping our minds completely open to every stream of digital data. We foolishly assume that we can respond to instant messages, browse through curated news feeds, and maintain a calm, integrated soul simultaneously. But in absolute psychological reality, every single task switch you execute inflicts a severe tax on your prefrontal cortex, a phenomenon recognized by behavioral scientists as attention residue. When you look away from your complex business report to read a random message, your focus does not instantly return to full capacity when you close the tab. A significant portion of your mental energy remains completely trapped by the previous stimulus, leaving your cognitive system deeply fractured, inefficient, and exhausted. This continuous fragmentation of your attention currency leaves your brain completely starved of the deep, sustained focus required to master a complex skill or manifest a brilliant contribution. You enter a state of chronic psychological stagnation, feeling intensely busy throughout the day while achieving absolutely zero meaningful results. Breaking free from this structural trap requires you to gather the immense bravery to systematically close down your attention leaks, constructing an unshakable protective boundary around your consciousness. Spend your quiet morning hours mapping out your environmental triggers, writing your thoughts in a physical journal, and consciously deciding what specific inputs you will permanently block from entering your awareness. By taking full responsibility for your sensory ecosystem, you permanently stop the energetic theft, reclaim your internal sovereignty, and successfully build a brilliant life on your own unshakable terms. Part 4. The 24-Hour Reset Protocol. The strategic fast from instant gratification. Once you have successfully mapped out your daily attention leaks and identified the silent drains of your vital force, you must gather the courage to execute a radical, strategic intervention. The 24-Hour Neurobiological Reset Protocol. This structured fast from instant gratification is not a mystical ritual or a superficial internet trend. It is a highly practical behavioral experiment designed to completely starve the modern algorithmic matrix of your vital human energy and give your overstimulated neuroreceptors the necessary space to restore their natural baseline. For one full circle of the sun, you commit to stepping entirely out of the digital matrix, completely removing any source of artificial, effortless rewards from your environment. By choosing to embrace absolute simplicity, you force your primitive brain to disconnect from its chemical dependencies, clearing the toxic fog from your mind and reclaiming your personal power. The legendary industrial pioneer and deep systematic thinker, Henry Ford, illuminated this exact internal transition when he observed that the competitor to be feared is one who never bothers about you at all, but goes on making his own business better all the time. This deep understanding implies that ultimate personal power and strategic dominance are never achieved by constantly reacting to external stimuli or participating in the crowd's chaotic race. Henry Ford guides us to realize that true victory is an inside job built by an integrated individual who directs their total focus toward optimizing their own systems. When you execute a complete digital fast, you step out of the rigged game of social manipulation and enter a sacred space of personal creation, where your only objective is to master your own internal state, steadily becoming 1% better every single day. To implement the reset protocol with absolute structural success, you must establish a strict, non-negotiable set of rules before your fast begins. The moment the clock strikes your designated start time, you must completely power down all technological devices, including your smartphone, your television, your tablet, and your personal computer, and store them physically outside your immediate living area. You eliminate all hyperpalatable foods, artificial stimulants, and commercial entertainment from your reach. Your entire environment is stripped down to the absolute essentials: a physical journal, a pen, a glass of water, ordinary, unflavored meals, and the raw presence of your own mind. You do not run away from the quiet space by listening to music or reading fiction. You allow your consciousness to settle into a state of deep, uninterrupted stillness. The immediate consequence of entering this radical state of simplicity is a profound, localized wave of behavioral friction. Within the first 3 hours of your fast, your subconscious mind will experience an intense survival alarm, flooded with a fierce urge to look for external stimulation. Your inner voice will naturally generate a sequence of logical excuses telling you that you are missing urgent business communications, that you are wasting valuable time, or that this experiment is completely unnecessary. This is the exact moment where true self-sovereignty is forged. Step back into the sacred position of the silent observer, watch these frantic cravings pass through your awareness without acting on them, and recognize that this intense psychological friction is living proof that your brain is successfully breaking its chemical shackles. As the quiet hours of the fast continue to unfold, the frantic restlessness within your chest will naturally begin to dissolve, replaced by a state of profound clarity, deep peace, and heightened sensory awareness. The ordinary features of your room look more vivid, your natural stream of thoughts flows with a clean, unhurried rhythm, and you discover a renewed sense of curiosity toward your independent goals. By having the absolute bravery to starve the modern matrix for 24 hours, you permanently shatter the illusion that you require continuous external validation to survive. You clear the accumulated toxic noise from your prefrontal cortex, restore your natural biochemical motivation, and regain the absolute sovereign strength to build a magnificent life on your own unshakable terms. Part 5. Rewiring for hard things. Finding joy in the friction of deep labor. When you successfully navigate the deep stillness of the 24-hour reset protocol and restore your internal baseline, you arrive at the most crucial phase of this neurobiological transformation, learning how to wire your brain to find genuine joy in the friction of hard things. A common misconception within modern self-improvement culture is believing that the ultimate goal of a dopamine detox is to live a life of permanent withdrawal, completely avoiding technology, material comforts, and modern conveniences for the rest of your days. But true personal sovereignty does not require you to live in a state of continuous, bitter isolation. The real objective is to strategically retrain your reward pathways so that you can allocate your vital human energy toward difficult, long-term evolutionary pursuits, such as building a business, mastering an intellectual discipline, or cultivating an exceptional physical body without requiring an immediate hit of public applause or digital validation. The brilliant German writer and Nobel Prize laureate Hermann Hesse provided a beautiful and profound light on the sacred process of inner structural alignment when he reflected in his deep works that a man's life is a dyadic path toward himself, an attempt at a path, a trace of a path, and no man has ever been entirely and completely himself. This deep wisdom implies that your developmental journey is an original composition that demands consistent effort, deliberate patience, and a willingness to navigate internal friction. Hermann Hesse forces us to recognize that true self-realization is never found on the effortless, passive road of instant gratification. It requires you to have the immense bravery to embrace the difficult path, finding deep fulfillment in the very labor of sculpting your character, steadily improving 1% day by day. To successfully rewire your brain for long-term production, you must completely transform your perception of psychological friction. In the past, whenever you encountered a difficult intellectual challenge or a boring segment of a project, your automated instinct was to interpret that internal discomfort as an existential crisis, a definitive signal to drop the work and look for an easy digital escape. But a sovereign practitioner views friction through a lens of radical curiosity and strategic opportunity. Understand that the burning sensation of resistance you feel in your prefrontal cortex when writing a complex strategy or studying a deep book is not a sign of human failure. It is the physical sensation of your neural pathways expanding, building structural durability, and clearing away cognitive weakness. When you learn to fall in love with the friction of deep labor, your relationship with your daily life undergoes a magnificent evolution. You no longer require an external manager to push your actions or a social network to validate your progress because your motivation is entirely generated from the intrinsic joy of execution. You step out of the crowd's rigged race of chasing fast, shallow results, and you become a long-term architect who derives a profound sense of self-worth from doing the hard, messy internal work that the average individual continuously avoids. You find a quiet, unshakable satisfaction in pushing through the borders of your mental exhaustion, knowing that every single act of disciplined labor serves as a durable brick building an authentic life of true sovereignty. To ground this transformative practice into your daily routine, establish a strict habit of executing your most demanding, friction-heavy tasks during the earliest hours of your morning, long before your mind is exposed to the superficial noise of the external world. When you sit down at your workspace to create, choose to view the initial 20 minutes of cognitive resistance simply as a necessary energetic tax that your system must pay to enter a state of deep, uninterrupted flow. Do not allow your mind to negotiate or look laterally for an escape route. Hold your posture, ground your awareness in your immediate physical actions, and trust your natural intellect to unpack the structure of the problem. By choosing to honor the friction rather than running away, you permanently break your cycles of procrastination, reclaim your internal power, and successfully build a brilliant life on your own terms. Part 6. Constructing the digital sanctuary. Building the filters to preserve your clarity. Once you have learned to find genuine fulfillment in the productive friction of hard work, you must immediately master the practical discipline of environmental defense. We live in a highly aggressive modern society that continuously demands our attention, floods our senses with endless digital advertisements, and bombards our minds with the chaotic opinions, judgments, and expectations of the crowd. If you attempt to navigate this fast-paced reality without a highly conscious, deliberate architectural filter to protect your neural pathways, your balanced chemical baseline will naturally become corrupted once again by the surrounding noise. Reclaiming your absolute self-sovereignty requires you to move from a state of passive vulnerability to a state of radical focus, actively building an unshakable digital sanctuary around your daily environment to preserve your mental clarity. The profound Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius provided a timeless, piercing light on this essential mental sovereignty when he observed in his personal writings that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This classical master of self-governance forces us to look completely inward for our center of stability. Marcus Aurelius makes it clear that external chaos, public criticism, or the heavy expectations of a collective group hold zero inherent power to fracture your psychological balance unless you actively grant them permission to enter your awareness. True strength means understanding that your mind is a sacred, sovereign fortress. When you focus your energy exclusively on controlling your choices, filtering your inputs, and cultivating present mindfulness, you build an unshakable internal alignment that remains perfectly serene regardless of the external storm. The fundamental misconception of the modern digital age is believing that we can maintain a calm, integrated soul while keeping our minds completely open to every stream of commercial information. We foolishly assume that we can leave our personal devices next to our beds, keep our digital notifications turned on throughout our deep work blocks, and still expect our nervous system to remain free from chronic stress and validation dependency. But your attention is a finite, sacred currency. Whenever you give an algorithm the power to trigger an automated emotional response in your chest, you are actively permitting a stranger to rob you of your internal peace. True mental discipline requires you to cultivate a sharp, unapologetic filter, learning to say a definitive no to any digital noise that does not serve your long-term evolutionary growth. Building a powerful digital sanctuary means taking full, aggressive responsibility for the physical layout of your workspace and home environment. Treat your technological devices strictly as cold, utilitarian tools designed to serve your creative production rather than psychological pacifiers designed to numb your underlying boredom. Set hard boundaries on your application access. Use software tools to permanently block attention-stealing websites during your working hours, and establish a rule to keep your phone completely powered down for the first and final 60 minutes of your daily routine. By choosing to consciously gate what enters your awareness, you protect your dopaminergic baseline from artificial manipulation, prevent your vital energy from being scattered across 1,000 empty distractions, and maintain a pristine state of mental clarity. When you successfully build this unshakable psychological and digital filter, your whole relationship with your everyday reality undergoes a magnificent transformation. You no longer walk through your career or your relationships looking for external approval or validation from the crowd because you are entirely anchored within your own definition of success. An unexpected piece of criticism, a cold look from a colleague, or a sudden change in societal trends ceases to possess the power to destabilize your emotional baseline. You step back into the position of the silent observer, watching the chaotic fluctuations of the external world pass through your awareness like harmless clouds across a vast, empty sky, utilizing your preserved mental clarity to take deliberate, impactful actions that serve your true purpose. Part 7. The Clean Drive. Walking forward as an unshakable, independent force. When you have successfully cultivated a sharp digital sanctuary to guard your inner sanctuary against the continuous noise of the crowd, you arrive at the magnificent summit of this cognitive evolution. Most traditional personal development platforms keep you trapped in a perpetual state of external dependency, conditioning you to continuously measure your progress against the accomplishments, praise, or validation of society. But true, sustainable fulfillment is never achieved by trying to win a collective race or molding your authentic self to fit the expectations of an external crowd. It is born when you completely step into absolute self-sovereignty, operating from a state of clean drive. A clean drive means you permanently withdraw your energy from artificial stimulation and choose to become the central sun of your own universe, anchoring your baseline motivation entirely within your independent definition of success. The magnificent American transcendentalist essayist and deep philosophical poet, Ralph Waldo Emerson, provided a definitive, timeless light on this final state of human maturity when he famously stated that to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. This profound philosophy serves as the ultimate declaration of personal freedom. Ralph Waldo Emerson challenges us to recognize that true greatness is never built by copying a trend or adapting to a social mold. The world will continuously attempt to sculpt your thoughts, your values, and your career using its predefined concepts. Standing firmly within your unique energy, protecting your original identity, and choosing to act from your deep internal values is the hardest, most magnificent victory a human being can secure on their journey to improve 1% day by day. To fully embody the birth of true self-sovereignty, we must dismantle the deep common misunderstanding that achieving personal independence requires us to live in constant aggressive defiance of society. An integrated, sovereign individual does not waste their vital force arguing with the crowd, proving their worth to critics, or loudly declaring their autonomy to the world. True sovereignty operates from a place of profound internal quietude. When you see someone else achieving massive external wealth, receiving widespread applause, or moving at a rapid pace on their own timeline, you no longer experience a single drop of inner panic or bitter envy. Because your dopamine pathways are balanced and your focus is strictly directed toward your inner kingdom, you can genuinely celebrate their light with an open heart, completely secure in the knowledge that their radiance can never obscure or diminish the unique, brilliant path you are paving for yourself. This unshakable internal alignment completely transforms how you navigate your daily life. When you stop treating your environment as a theater to secure social validation, you permanently reclaim your personal power to cultivate deep habits, enrich your creative intellect, and build meaningful, authentic connections with the world. If you encounter an unexpected professional bottleneck, a sudden financial shift, or a period of quiet isolation, you no longer allow your ego to translate those occurrences as signs of human failure. Instead, you view them simply as natural valleys on your evolutionary sine wave, utilizing your preserved mental clarity to adapt, optimize your creation process, and move forward with absolute composure. You become a highly grounded force who cannot be easily shamed, rushed, or manipulated by external opinions, because you have already anchored your soul within a sanctuary of unconditioned self-acceptance. To ground this final realization into your daily existence, make a conscious decision today to completely hand over the crown of your life back to your true self. Let go of the exhausting, heavy burden of performing for a society that does not own your destiny. When you sit down in your quiet space tonight to reflect on your journey, look directly into the mirror and commit to being the absolute ruler of your attention, your thoughts, and your actions. Understand that stepping into self-sovereignty is not a rapid event, but a continuous sequence of small, daily choices where you choose to honor your unique rhythm. By having the brave conviction to stay firmly on your own track day by day, you permanently break the walls of the comparison prison, protect your vital energy from depletion, and successfully build a brilliant, free, and magnificent life that completely belongs to you. We have traveled together down a profound path of absolute awakening, starting from the baseline of recognizing the curated traps of the artificial modern menu, discovering the neurobiological loops of dopamine baseline crashes, and understanding how to map out the silent attention leaks that drain your vital force. We explored the strategic implementation of the 24-hour reset protocol, learned to fall in love with the productive friction of hard labor, and discovered how to construct a powerful digital sanctuary to preserve your internal clarity and step into true self-sovereignty with a completely clean drive. You have encountered this message at this precise moment because your consciousness is entirely prepared to receive a fresh wave of transformational energy and step boldly into an unwritten chapter of your life. Real change is undeniably a demanding path that requires fierce consistency, radical bravery, and an unconditional stream of love directed at your own soul. However, remember that every single drop of intentional effort you invest in looking inward today serves as the most durable brick building a lifetime of absolute peace and structural resilience. Thank you so much for investing your valuable time with us today on Everyday Better You. If this message deeply resonated with your heart, please make sure to hit the subscribe button, share this audio with the people you genuinely love, and leave your personal reflections below in the comments section. Stay completely consistent, keep nurturing your inner world, and continue walking beside us on this beautiful journey of becoming 1% better every single day. Goodbye for now, and we look forward to welcoming you back in our upcoming podcast episodes.